And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and next to me is my beautiful co-host, Laraib. As we have made it, it is finally the NFL playoffs. The NFL season, it always starts, in the preseason, you're so excited for the regular season to start. And then by about week 6, you're kind of like, all right, all these games are kind of, they're fun, but let's get to the playoffs. And now we are here, Laraib. It is time. We're so excited. We made it all this way. Last week we were both pretty sick. We were, traveling. Plus, that was following the DeMar Hamlin game. We were planning on filming after that. We just felt like it wasn't a great time to film. I just out of respect for the situation, everything like that. But now we are refreshed. First off, just sending our prayers and everything. We're so happy for DeMar. He just got discharged from the hospital, and he's gonna go back home to Buffalo. And whether or not he plays football again, we're just happy that he is alive, he is well, and it's amazing for his sake. But Laraib, I'm super excited that we're here. Anything you want to say before we hop into things?
Yeah, you went ahead and you beat me in the picks, Lewis. Yeah, it came down to the wire the last 2 weeks. Let me go ahead and pull this up for you guys. We have 2 weeks to go through, Lewis. Week 17 and week 18 for the big one was week 17. That was for me. If I wanted to tie it, I have to win these last 2 weeks. But I had Philadelphia as my lock. Obviously, that didn't hit. Minnesota just got stomped by Green Bay, and that was that. I mean, that was the end of my picks. And then even in week 18, of course, we had to tie. Denver and Atlanta pulled through for you, even though Detroit comes through for me and my Seahawks make it to the postseason off of that upset. But Lewis, congratulations to you. I give it up. You won week 15, 16, and 17 to give you that big lead going into the last couple of weeks. And, kudos to you for winning the picks. But now we're in the playoffs, and it is a whole different league. It's a whole different set of game plans, how players, just play, how coaches coach. And we'll see if you really have what it takes to make it through the playoffs with all the predictions.
Well, we remember what happened last playoff time. You hitched your wagon to the Bucks, and they pulled you all the way through the picks, and you won. So maybe I might adopt that strategy, Laraib. I'm not sure yet. But what I will tell you is looking at these past 2 weeks that really gave me the edge. Philly, New Orleans, I just had a feeling. Man, I won the picks, but I lost the opportunity for $85. We're not going to talk about that. But going through some things, Detroit really was, a really great story. I know we're about to talk about them in a second, but just overall, you put a little scare into me around midseason. I got a little too cute. I was trying some things, but then when it came, backpacking time, had to get into the playoffs. I had to do my thing. So that's why the past few weeks have been an utter dominance. But of course, we tied the last few weeks. We're going to crunch numbers, get all the stats for you guys come some later episodes and just kind of talk about how we did on the season. But if you're here, thank you for making with us this far. We don't really do this for support monetary gain. We do it because it's fun and we love talking football. So, let's get into the podcast today. First, we have our Saint Seattle corner. And now it's official. The Saints are done playing football in 2020. Well, they're 2022, but now they're done for this season. And man, I am so happy that they are done. Yesterday, I wish I could just say it was a microcosm of the season, but really it was just awful. I mean, you put up the first touchdown, everything looks great. You're at home, defense is playing fantastic, and then you let up a cheap fumble into the end zone recovered by an offensive lineman for a touchdown, and no one scores the rest of the game. Will Lutz misses 2 field goals, and of course, on the final drive, after Sam Darnold played like garbage all game, I think that was his last start for an NFL team, unless he gets lucky somewhere. He goes down, they get a game-winning field goal in New Orleans. Just sad. I feel bad for the fans who went to the game. It seems like Dennis Allen will be returning next season. Awesome. He likes defensive coordinator. I think he's really good at defensive coordinator. So I'm just like, maybe we could figure something out where he steps down. We put a real leader up, but man, I don't know how that's going to work out. We get a lot of, expiring deals. We have guys who are just aging in general, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, a lot of guys, we're going to have to make big decisions on. Michael Thomas, Kamara. guys who it's probably, might be a year early on Kamara, but that's usually when it's the right time to deal them. So a lot of big decisions this offseason. Obviously, Sean Payton, he's still on our payroll. So that means if a team wants to sign him, we'll talk about coach openings later, they're going to have to trade for him. And teams have been, talking about that. They are willing to give up, willing to give up a first round pick for Sean Payton. So that's at least exciting to look forward to in a year where we don't have a first round pick. So we'll see what happens this offseason. Very disappointing season, finishing 7-10, tied for second in the division. The Atlanta, Carolina went 7-10, and of course the Bucks went 8-9. Just an awful division, awful year. But hey, good front office. Olave looked special. Rashid Shaheed had moments. Alontae Taylor had moments. There are some players to look forward to. I'll always be a Saints fan. It just was not our season. We're about to move into some nicer things here.
No, Lewis, like you mentioned in the last point, it really could have been a year for you guys to once again take the NFC South by the reins, especially if you had a competent head coach. And it's really mind-boggling to me that Dennis Allen is still going to be coaching the New Orleans Saints for the 2023 season. And we talked about all year long about, this team has all the right players, right? You talk about some guys that they drafted and Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. And then you talk about the defensive cornerstones in Demario Davis and Cam Jordan. And you think you have just a well-rounded roster that could definitely compete in their division. And then they lose out to the Bucks, like just a horrible week 18 loss to the Panthers at home. And so, we'll see what this offseason looks like for the Saints team. Like you mentioned, a lot of guys could be moving around, pieces could move around. The Saints have been in cap hell. They restructured Michael Thomas's contract a little bit and freed up around $14 million in cap space. But we'll see moving forward what they do for this draft. You could definitely see them moving somebody, like you mentioned, Alvin Kamara, to a team who could use a running back like that. We see how it just transformed the 49ers offense. So you could see, a lot of different teams like, hey, we could use a piece like that in our team. Michael Thomas, of course, he's had some disputes in the Saints all season long for the past couple seasons, injury bug here and there. He's getting surgeries late. Just a lot of turmoil over there. And of course the Jameis Winston situation where he's healthy.
Oh, he's done.
They don't put him back in. And so, they ride with Andy Dalton for the rest of the season. Like you were saying about Sean Payton, if they trade him and get a first round pick from somewhere, hopefully you guys lean quarterback in the draft and start trying to develop some young guy. And we'll see where the Saints go from there, Lewis. But moving on to my Seahawks.
Playoff bound, baby.
I mean, this has been a really, really weird season, Lewis, when we were only supposed to win 4 games. Then, we go on a 5-game losing streak. It looks like, outside looking into the playoffs. And then, the Detroit Lions get it done for us. And now we're in the playoffs with Geno Smith. And, ever since week 1, it's been an amazing season, Lewis, with all the rookies, Geno Smith and everybody else on both sides of the ball. And so now we're limping into the playoffs, Lewis, to be realistic. And we are facing a divisional opponent. And so I don't want to say our chances are 0. I know they're saying we have around 26% chance to win this game, but I'm not giving a hope on this team, especially, we played the 49ers before. Pete Carroll has dominated Kyle Shanahan while he's been in San Francisco. And so we'll see how this game goes, Lewis, but, we're probably first round knockouts. But, we do have the Broncos pick, which is a top 5 pick. And so we'll see where the Seahawks go with that, and, maybe lean quarterback or, some defensive cornerstone on the defensive line. I know our front 7 has been banged up this year. And, Jordan Brooks with the ACL injury, He's done for the rest of the season. He's going to probably miss quite a bit of the next year too. But, I'm excited. This season has been awesome. Even the next couple of seasons is going to be really, really great. Even if we don't draft a quarterback, I still believe in Geno Smith. He fell off a little bit towards the, latter half of the season. His numbers came down, but, still somebody who nobody thought would do anything in Seattle, just to see what he did. He's the new Seahawks single season passing. He holds the new single season passing record for the Seahawks. And so, I'm excited. Great season for the Seahawks team, Lewis.
It really is. And then you look at what this season sets up. You have the 4th overall pick in the draft, thanks to Denver, right? Is it 4?
I think it's 4 or 5, something.
Okay. Top 5 pick in the NFL draft, which is always amazing. And you still made the playoffs. You had great development from a lot of your rookies, like you're talking about the two tackles, Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas have been playing amazing all season. You mentioned, Tariq Woolen on the outside, our boy who we love, and a lot of the other guys. It's a shame Jordan Brooks went down. He was having a really good season after him not being my favorite pick in the draft of Seattle history. But I've kind of adopted this team. I've always kind of had to hate the Seahawks because you were a fan. But this is a lovable team. I like Geno. What his future is in this league, I think we can both agree. He's not the caliber of quarterback that you can, really take you there. But who knows? Maybe a full offseason of him as the number one, things could be different. We'll see what happens at the running back position. Kenneth Walker's been looking impressive. You should get Penny back next season. We'll see what happens with him health-wise. So there's a lot of things to look forward to as a Seahawks fan. We'll talk about this upcoming week. I know you were alluding to it a little bit, but yeah, there's just we'll get into that matchup. But let's focus on the good things. You're in the playoffs. Things are looking bright. So I'm happy for you. I'm happy for the Seattle team. But how did you get to the playoffs, Laraib? Well, let's talk about that Sunday night football game with the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. I want to talk about both sides of this game, starting with Detroit. Detroit, their season is over, but I mean, wow. Did they end the season with a bang, finishing over 500 for the first time since 2016. Unfortunately, they did not make the playoffs. If they would have beaten Seattle early in the season, they would have had that tiebreaker, or if they would have beaten the Panthers to end it out, they had chances. And I know I just want to focus on the good things right now. He's going to love this for Dan Campbell. He's a coach you want to root for. He really gets the most out of his players. And you could tell towards the end of the season, the defense was buying in. So you really got to love that for a guy like that, who's been questioned. His intelligence has been questioned. Just another Lions coach. Who cares? But you need, for some of these franchises, and we're going to get into the coach openings later, but you need a guy to dramatically shift your culture. And that's like a thing. If you keep hiring these, Joe Schmo offensive coordinators who, they might have been good as an offensive coordinator with next to Patrick Mahomes or something, and then they come in, they're not really a big presence. Sometimes for these losing franchises who are just perpetual losers, you need a guy to come in there. He doesn't care about what people think. He doesn't care about opinions. He doesn't care where this franchise has been or is going, to come in there and say, hey, we're doing things my way. We're doing things a winning way, and just change the culture. And Detroit is going to be so much better for it. They have so many playmakers, and I'm happy for them because this is a game they found out right before the game started. You're out. Season's over. And then to still go into Lambeau and win that game with really nothing to play for in terms of winning, like in terms of going to the playoffs, nothing to play for, sure. But in terms of pride, in terms of these guys' last game together with that group, you could argue, Laraib, and I've heard this argument. I was thinking it, after the game, that the pressure of not, oh man, we got to win this game to get in the playoffs. It kind of took the edge off of it, and they played free. They went for it on fourth downs. They, that weird, screen pass or bubble screen on the outside. Then he lateraled it back. That was an insane play, and just to have the balls to pull that off in the fourth quarter in a close game is insane. Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, has been doing an amazing job, and it'll shock me if he's not a head coach come next season. Just, he's the hottest commodity in the league. A young, smart offensive mind who's trying new things. There will definitely be teams looking for him, and we'll get into those later. So that's my thing on the Lions. Just kudos to them. An amazing season for their standards, and build on this. You have, I think, Jared Goff. I think he's the guy, Laraib. I don't know what you think about him, but he played very well this season. Obviously, a great offensive line to protect him. But, he did his job. And in that game on Sunday, did he not look like the better of the two quarterbacks on the field? I really do think so. So I think they have their guy. I know Jared Goff, he doesn't have a lot of fans around the league, but he's on par with Kirk Cousins, in my opinion. And I think that's a guy who's not too expensive in today's standards for quarterbacks. So I think he's a guy you hold on to.
Yeah, going back to this whole Detroit organization, just outstanding season for them. Just the way they battled, even without any playoff implications in line for them. And it seems like they really found something in all their coordinators. The defensive coordinator, they really came on in the latter half of the season. And so I'll agree with you. Jared Goff looks like he's a serviceable quarterback in the NFL, and it really wasn't his fault that they lost so many of the games. It was going back to early in the season. Throughout the first 6 weeks of the season, they were leading the NFL in points scored per game, and it was really that defense that was just letting up huge play after play. Deep bombs, big gashes on the ground, and it looks like they found something in this Aiden Hutchinson guy, Lewis. 3 interceptions, 9.5 sacks in the season for him. Looks like he's right there for defensive rookie of the year. And, it's going to be great to see what this team can do moving forward. In the next couple of seasons, the Vikings team, of course, had a great season this year. But with Aaron Rodgers, looked like, we'll see what his future holds in Green Bay. But it looked like, he might be done. And so now it looks like Detroit might be, one of the upper echelon teams over there in the NFC North, Lewis. But, with Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift, Jameson Williams almost had a huge score in that one. This team has a bright future, Lewis. If they can draft some young, cornerstone defensive guys in this upcoming draft, we'll see what this team can do in the coming seasons.
Well, you mentioned Aaron Rodgers, so let's get into that. Obviously, the losing end of this game, huge disappointing loss for the Packers. You're at home. The Lions have nothing to play for. You have everything to play for, everything to lose. You just win and you're in at this point. That's all you had to do. And you lost at home. And a large part was the lack of playmaking on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah, there were problems defensively. And I know a lot of Packers fans are calling for Joe Barry's head because that's the thing you do at the end of the season. It's call for the defensive coordinator's head. And yeah, he's not great. I'll give you that. But I think it was the offense that held this team back. And you saw guys like Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs starting to kind of pick things up later in the season. The argument was made, hey, Aaron Rodgers, maybe instead of taking these excursions to Brazil and doing ayahuasca, you take these summers and you're getting paid $50 million and you get these young guys reps. You get used to them. You help learn their tendencies. They learn your tendencies and you get these things going. We've been talking about it all season. We wrote an obituary for this team. I guess we weren't mistaken in that point, Laraib, because now their season is officially over. I want to ask you, is the Aaron Rodgers era over in Green Bay, and did he do it to himself?
Is the era over? I don't think so, Lewis. He's getting paid $15 million a year, and so it's going to be really hard to find a team, especially the way the season ended, to say, oh, yeah, we'll trade for Aaron Rodgers and bring him on our team. Somebody who's a locker room nuisance. Media, he's always, fighting with the media. Of course, he doesn't like his family at all. So that's just another thing. And so is he done in Green Bay? We've been saying this for the past couple of seasons, Lewis. I think, no, he's not done in Green Bay unless he just decides to retire. He's going to have to play out that contract because I don't see many teams trading for him. And if he did it to himself, Lewis, I think he did, signing these huge extensions. You're not able to bring in anybody else, to help yourself out. Especially, now that the defense, of course, they lost guys like Zadarius Smith. Green Bay has always traditionally been this team that always says, we're gonna draft guys instead of buying them out and paying them this big money. And it's a lot of that has been towards Aaron Rodgers, signing these big deals. And now, his career is on the downward trend. He only won 1 Super Bowl, and I think that's going to be it for Aaron Rodgers, Lewis. And I was listening to, of course, you've been listening to the Bill Simmons podcast. He was talking about how, Tom Brady can play to 45, but that is the exception, not the rule. A lot of these quarterbacks, they are not going to be Brady-esque and play till they're 45, 50 years old and, play good at that age, make Super Bowls, win Super Bowls. And so, we're going to see a lot of these guys dwindle towards, their 40s and start to fall out of the league. And, of course, this golden standard is Tom Brady, but that's not the standard for, Aaron Rodgers or anybody else. That's just for Tom Brady himself.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just insane discipline, insane genetics. Tom Brady is one of one. You're right. Aaron Rodgers is 38. He's going to be 39 next December. This is usually when quarterbacks fall off. Now, is he going to have a gradual fall off, or is it going to be a cliff where we'll see what happens next season? But I think what they have to do now, there will be suitors. I disagree with you. There will be suitors for Aaron Rodgers' talents, especially in the AFC. I think a team like Las Vegas would love to get an Aaron Rodgers to come in there. And hey, Aaron Rodgers knows Devontae Adams. He could take all the time he wants off, and Devontae Adams will know how to play with Aaron Rodgers. You can make an argument there. I've seen arguments for teams like Tennessee, just teams that are probably desperate enough to get Aaron Rodgers. So there are definitely suitors out there, but we'll see what happens. I doubt they trade him as well. But for the Packers, you need to see what you have in Jordan Love. It's been 3 years. He's had some games this season where he's come in and he's actually looked pretty impressive. And you have this huge salary cap just sitting with Aaron Rodgers, and Jordan Love's never going to get any play. And this is the 5th-year option. This is the year where you have to make a decision on him, really. And you can say, yeah, we see him in practice. We know what he's capable of. We'll get rid of him. But, like, in-game reps are completely different. So this is why it upsets me with this team that's just like, you need to make a decision on your future. If you're going to get young receivers, young talent, all these young star defensive players, then you have this fossil at quarterback who's only going to he's not getting better. This is Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to get better. You can make the argument, oh, dude, you know who's coming in the building? Odell Beckham Jr. He's going to change this thing. Yeah, that's not happening. That's not happening, Packers fans. So next season, there's going to be a lot of big decisions for all the teams that don't win the Super Bowl, basically. But for this team specifically, changing of the guard, I think, is overdue. But realistically, probably not going to happen. You're probably correct. And they stand pat and just wait. But let's move on, Laraib, to other huge changes around the league. This is probably the last time we talk about some of these teams. But we have currently 5 job openings open on the market right now for head coaches. We have Houston, Arizona, Indiana, Carolina, and Denver. The Washington job is still filled by Ron Rivera, but we both kind of expect that job to be open, but we're not going to talk about that now. So, Rob, out of the 5 teams I just mentioned, Houston, Arizona, Indiana, Carolina, and Denver, which of these jobs is the most attractive for a coach, and which of these jobs are you staying away from with a 39.5-foot pole?
The most attractive job, Lewis, is going to be the most difficult one. It's going to be with the Denver Broncos playing in that AFC West. Lewis, talking about all those other teams and the Chargers and the Chiefs, and we'll see what the Raiders do. But for Denver, it's going to be difficult playing against those teams. But you have Russell Wilson, a Pro Bowler quarterback who, of course, he had a bad season this year, but he picked it up towards the end once Nat Hackett got fired. And it's that defense, Lewis. It's that defense that carried this team all season long. And so, you talk about guys like Sean Payton, maybe an offensive mastermind going into Denver. That could be an awesome place for him to go. And for the least appealing job, Lewis, I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. They have no pieces, in my opinion, on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball that can compare to a team like the Colts, who at least have a solid defense and a good running back and wide receiver. In Arizona, at least you have Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. In Carolina, you have some nice young pieces on the defensive side, and J.C. Horn, Brian Burns, and then our boy Jeremy Chin. And so you look at Houston, Jalen Petrie and your guy from LSU, Derek Stingley. Yeah, they're good. They're good, solid pieces over there. But you talk about, Davis Mills at quarterback. Damian Pierce is a good running back, but he's, running backs don't carry, offenses anymore in the NFL. And you look at this team, great market. You're going to be in Houston, Texas. Who doesn't want to be over here? But you just talk about the pieces on that team, Lewis. That's the one I'm most concerned about.
Yeah, these are just the jobs that are available on Black Monday. Obviously, the big firings that took place for Lovie Smith and Cliff Kingsbury. We knew that, Carolina, Denver, and Indiana have been open. But I think the big thing for me, Laraib, is if I'm a head coach, it's not just about the roster, because I can fix the roster. It's not going to take too long for me to get the guys in that I want. I mean, obviously,
you could fix the Houston Texans roster.
Well, all right, let me preface this. Obviously, a franchise quarterback or a huge, they have a lot of talent on one side of the ball. That makes a job more desirable for me. The biggest thing I look for is a stable front office, because that's what I want. I want people who are going to believe in me, who have a culture of success, and they know what they're doing. And I think Denver is the position, because Denver has that culture of success. They've won a Super Bowl in the past decade, which none of these teams can say they have. Carolina was in that Super Bowl with them, but that was, different situation. And I think Denver and Carolina are the two teams that I'm considering. Carolina, just because David Tepper, it seems like he's, he has a quick trigger, which does make me nervous, but they have talent in Carolina. Like you mentioned, the young defensive pieces, and I like some of their offensive pieces. That running game with Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard looked really good, and that their offensive line was playing very well. It just seems like they need to figure out quarterback, and they have draft capital to maybe, we see that Chicago is number one pick. Maybe you go all in and you trade the house to go for that number one overall pick and get a Bryce Young. But that's also, in my opinion, the least desirable job is Indianapolis, because Jim Irsay is insane. The quarterback situation over there is not desirable at all. Yeah, they have a low pick, but then again, you mentioned that defense. It's a bunch of old, banged up guys. Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Leonard. I mean, there's no one really else that I trust. Like, the best player on their defense, interior guy, what's his name? Help me out.
DeForest Buckner.
DeForest Buckner, he's in his prime. He's great. But like, besides that, even their offensive line that we've been heralding as one of the best offensive lines in the league has just been mid this whole season, mediocre. So it's like you can't really trust them. I think that is the worst situation, just because I would not want to work under Jim Irsay. I do not trust that front office. Just the weird decisions they've made over the year. I don't want to be a part of that. Plus, the indecision at quarterback, and they don't have great draft capital this year to go up and get a guy. You saw what Carolina did by dealing some things at the trade deadline, dealing Christian McCaffrey away. They're able to get some more draft equity that they can package together to maybe move up to that number one spot. So I think that Carolina and Denver are the top dogs. Denver, obviously, I trust the front office more than any other group. But if you can't fix Russ, then that's the worst quarterback situation in the league. You can't get rid of Russ. That's too much money that you're paying him to cut him, and no one in the league is going to take him on. So that is your reclamation project for the entire offseason, is fix whatever the hell was wrong with Russ. So that's why, for me, I think Carolina is the best job, Rob. I'm going to go with Carolina as my answer, and the least desirable is Indianapolis. I think Houston's a wild card. I think Houston, they have some bright young pieces, no expectations in that building whatsoever, but also their front office with Caserio and the weird preacher. Yeah, don't even get close to that situation.
Yeah, I mean, 4 different head coaches in 4 different straight seasons. It's going to be interesting, especially with the win. Now they have the number 2 pick, and we'll see how that goes for quarterback, especially if Chicago trades somebody. That's going to be repercussions for years to come if the number 1 guy is somebody insane and the number 2 guy ends up being, Zach Wilson Jr. They're going to be talking about Lovie Smith for a long time over here. In
good, hey, good for Lovie Smith, because he knew. They told him before the game he was fired. So he says, you know what? Screw them. I'm going to win this freaking game. And he went and did it by getting a touchdown on a 4th and 20 and then going for 2 to take the lead. Major respect to Lovie Smith. I love that. He probably won't ever coach an NFL game again, but he's a legend, a Chicago Bears legend. I know they're loving him in Chicago now that they have the number 1 pick, and we'll see what happens when we get over there. But, Laraib, that's our focus on the regular season. Let's shift our focus now to the postseason. We're going to do our playoff power rankings. We've both been assigned a conference. I have the AFC, you have the NFC, and we're going to go through and power rank the remaining playoff teams before wildcard weekend. Well, obviously, we're going to go into our playoff rankings or playoff matchups specifically for the wildcard weekend in our next episode. Well, let's just go ahead and right now, before they start, we're going to go through our playoff rankings, Laraib. You go first, and you have the NFC.
For the NFC, Lewis, from 7 to 1, I will go at number 7. I will go my Seattle Seahawks.
Boo.
At the 6, I will go the New York Giants. Yeah. At 5, I'll go Minnesota. At 5, Minnesota, 4, Tampa Bay, 3, Dallas, 2, Philadelphia, and 1, San Francisco. Let me know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. I think that's perfect for where they are. The only team that's really, it seems like, is unbeatable right now is San Francisco. All the other teams in the conference, honestly, Laraib, are pretty good. The Seahawks are good, but all the other teams are pretty good. The 49ers, say which one about Brock Purdy. Say which one about Brock Purdy. They've been great, and he's been playing great. And it's just crazy to see. He's sticking in the pocket. He's making tough throws. He seems confident. He seems bought into the system. Kyle Shanahan he's not holding anything back. He's letting Brock Purdy go with this offense. And Debo just came back. They're looking like they're about to be firing on all cylinders come playoff time. And unfortunately, that means your Seahawks are in the way of this bulldozer. Besides that, Philadelphia kind of limped into the playoffs. So they are the 1 seed, so you have to respect them. That's why I agree with them. They're number 2 spot. I do put Dallas slightly ahead of Tampa just because of I trust the offense of Dallas more. But we'll talk into that matchup. It's a very interesting matchup, and we'll definitely get into that one. So I agree. Then they're right. The neck and neck, 3 and 4, and then 5 Minnesota. Yeah, even though they're the 3rd best record, they are the 5th team. You just can't trust them whatsoever, and they've proved in games against these powerhouses they just simply can't hang in with the punches. Giants at 6. Honestly, they could freaking win this weekend. They're just a really smart coach team. They just have the lowest ceiling of all these teams, but a really high floor because of just they're really strong foundationally. They get the basics down. It's just a very smart team. And they're honestly kind of just happy to be there. And then Seattle at 7. Yeah.
Another team happy to be there.
Right.
Yeah, no, I will say about the Giants, Lewis. You talk about a team who's had to come back so many times this season from huge deficits, 10-point deficits, 14-point deficits. And, we know how Daniel Jones is passing the ball, all the receivers that they lack. And somehow they're still able to claw themselves back out of holes. And so, you say you get to the playoffs, you're going to be facing Minnesota and you're down big and you think, oh, we got to throw it to get back in. But this is one of those teams, Lewis, they're going to ground and pound that ball against this Minnesota front, and we'll see what they're made of this weekend. But, yeah, for a lot of these NFC teams, it's 49ers and everybody else, to be honest. Like you said, they won 10 straight in a row, Lewis. They were 3 and 4 at one point, and, there's questions. They're on their 3rd quarterback this season. It's going to be really interesting to see if Brock Purdy wins the Super Bowl and wins Super Bowl MVP. Who's going to be the starting quarterback?
I think we'll get to that bridge when we cross it, all right?
Who's going to be the starting quarterback for the 49ers next year, Lewis?
I'll tell you right now, if Brock Purdy wins the Super Bowl, there's no way in hell he's not your starting quarterback next year. If he's 10-0, undefeated, wins the Super Bowl as a starter, and then you're like, I don't know, Trey Lance, we did pick him number 3. Get out of here. But let's move on now. I did my AFC power rankings where I do think we will have a few disagreements. By my number 1, I do have Buffalo. Number 2, I have Cincinnati. 3, Kansas City. 4, the Chargers. 5, Jacksonville. 6, Baltimore. 7, Miami. 6 and 7, Baltimore, Miami. It's just the question marks at quarterback. Now, I still think I would have Miami at 7. Maybe I'd put them over at Jacksonville if Tua was healthy, but I just don't know. Baltimore, I would definitely have over Jacksonville. So those last 3 teams are kind of in a group of happy to be here, but also there are expectations. But this AFC field, Laraib, this is a much better group of teams than the NFC. I'll tell you right that. Now, San Francisco might be the best team, maybe, but this group of 7, if all their quarterbacks are healthy and all these offenses play to the potential that we know they can play at, we're talking about completely different universes here in these 2 conferences. But what do you think? Perfect list?
No, I completely have to disagree. My top 3 are in a completely different order, Lewis. I mean, I don't want. I guess I'll tip my hand. I got the Bengals at the number 1. I got the Chiefs at the number 2, and I have the Bills at the number 3, Lewis. Just because the Bills, they were scaring me a little bit this past weekend against the Patriots. I know they're technically they're already in the playoffs, but they were still fighting for the number 1 seed. Well, not really, since the Chiefs lost, but they were still fighting for something, Lewis. Or excuse me, they were fighting for the number 2 seed because if they won, the Bengals won, and they lost, the Bengals would have been the number 2 seed. Yeah, but they were scaring me a little bit. That Patriots defense held them in check a little bit. If it wasn't for those 2 special teams touchdowns, we might be talking about a different scenario here, Lewis. But, their offense, with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, you can never count them out. But I just like the Bengals way more. I think, with their running back duo that they have and just the weapons all across the board. And it's really been that defense has been the key for me, Lewis. going back to last season, still they don't have any household names for any of you casual listeners out there, any casual football fans. But, you talk about guys like Von Bell, Trey Hendrickson, who came over from your Saints, just guys everywhere. And it all starts with Louis Anarumo. And he's he's beaten Patrick Mahomes 3 times in a row. And he's just, until I see this Bengals team lose in the playoffs, I got to ride with them all the way to the promised land. And so, the Bengals and, of course, the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, he's going to win MVP this year. He should win MVP this year. And with him out there, no matter what type of guys they got at wide receiver, him and Travis Kelce are also always going to be amazing on that 1-2
and
punch.
home field advantage.
Yeah, that's and then they're going to be home all throughout the playoffs. And so, this AFC is going to be amazing to watch. Lewis, maybe not as, of course, much more fun than the NFC. Chargers, I couldn't believe that the guys, Joey Bosa played and got banged up again. Mike Williams played, he got banged up again. Herbert took some big hits in that game for no reason.
That's awful. That was actually awful by Brandon Staley, but go on.
And now they have to go to Jacksonville, who ran or stomped on them earlier this season. By the way, every single game that we're watching for the playoffs this weekend has already been played once this season. So that's, mid as hell. But, you're the playoffs. I do agree with you. Chargers at 4, Baltimore 5, Jacksonville 6, and Miami 7. Like you said, if Tua plays, which most likely not, Skylar Thompson and your boy Josh Allen will be going head to head this weekend, and so we'll see that, Lewis. But I think that will conclude this episode of the First and Goal podcast. Unless you have anything else to say, Lewis.
No, hey, just as always, links in our bio below. If you want to see one wherever we're posting, we'll have a huge playoff breakdown of all these matchups going forward and our picks for those. Again, the regular season picks are over. I won the box combo, so big shout out. Thank you, Laraib, for your generosity. But this is the playoffs. This is when the stakes get higher. There's less games, less margin for error. We're not going to be doing locks, upsets, and best bets. We're just picking the teams. So it could be a difference of one game that decides the entire playoffs. And the big prize at the end, of course, is the Caniac combo that we have been lusting for all season long. And I will win this time. So make sure you tune in. We're super excited to get into the playoffs finally. And then I think they're exciting matchups. I know you said mid. I think, some of these matchups that happened back in week 1, week 2. Can we even consider that this season? Completely different teams nowadays with a long 18-week season. So, but that'll do it for this week's episode of the First and Goal podcast. Signing out.
Peace.